what I like to do, again for my own benefit, I like to take a look at, and I'm always hunting for difficult mishnayos, difficult things, Pirkei Avot and other places, the things that are difficult to understand, and looking for explanations. And what I call difficult to understand is not, first of all, it's difficult for me to understand, and other things that I sort of choke up on when trying to explain over the years, learning through a Seder of Pirkei Avot with people who are initiates. I'm always thinking, what is the guy, what is the gal, what is the company going to say when I, learn, this Mishnah? I mean, let's say, for example, we go back to the first parak of Pirkei Avot, and it says the following thing, that a person should call hatar b'sichi ima isha, gairim ra la'atzmo, baitel midivrei Torah, v'sofi liyorish gehenim. Again, not here to solve everybody's problem of political correctness or not political correctness. The Torah is certainly not an insulting document, but it's certainly not going to fit certain people's expectations and idealism, especially if it's a wrong set of idealism. Sometimes it challenges our assumptions. I remember hearing a mashal years ago, a very, very clever Rav, a wonderful fellow, and he was saying, a fellow went into a tailor to get a suit, a farmer, first time he was going to get fitted with a nice suit. By the way, I have a note over here, I should refer to it, that says that the shir tonight is Le'ilu Nishmas Yechil Yisrael Mechoil Ben Pola Harari. Right? So Bez Hashem, the neshama should have an aliyah. All right, that's the best food for the neshama. So this farmer came to tailor, got him fitted for a suit. They didn't have Sims back there, no bash to go to. They went to a tailor. He measured, tailor made. So that's what tailor made a suit. Fellow came back now to try on a suit. Tailor was busy with another customer, and he said, go into the fitting room and come out, and we'll, check the final, do the final touching pieces on it. And so, meanwhile, the farmer's in the fitting room, and you hear him screaming, "What did you do to me, Taylor? What did you do to me?" He squeezes on the pants. He can hardly, he's got to hold all of his breath in. And he zips up the pants. He's busting out of them. He puts on the jacket. And he's like, he can hardly get his arms in it. Like it's so tight, like somebody that's for 3 sizes smaller than him. He comes out like a little bar mitzvah boy, like an adult in his bar mitzvah boy suit, busting at the seams. And he goes, "What did you do to me?" Complaining to the tailor. "What did you do to me?" And the tailor takes one look at him and bursts into laughter. And he tells him, "Foolish farmer." He says, "Take off your overalls before you put on the suit." Sometimes someone's trying to fit something onto themselves, and they haven't taken off their old assumptions. Right? When we're learning Torah, so part of the premise is we have to remove some of our old assumptions. If we want to understand something, we have to remove some of the old ways that we have to look at. That's half of the problems that people have in explaining certain things that are going on is by changing certain basic assumptions. But here's another Mishnah that had troubled me, and because it rings in the ear in a very, very discordant way. Rabbi Yaakov says the following thing. By the way, it's very interesting in Pirkei Avot. Whenever it says, there's different ways Pirkei Avot is saying that people said things. Right? Hu haya omer, he used to say. That's one expression. Hu haya omer, the Rav Bartanur says, doesn't mean that he said it. He said it once, like at an inaugural address. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It wasn't a one-time, quotable statement, but it was something he used to repeat all the time. That's Hu Hayomer. That's what Hu Hayomer is about. They used to say it all the time. Sometimes you have a Rebbe, and he repeats himself. We have a parent at the Shabbos table, the Pesach, and remember to be kind to the people. My son, goes to a certain yeshiva. What am I going? And the Rosh Yeshiva always mentioned, to do for the klal, and to do for the, and to be for the klal, and to be for the klal. There's certain themes that wherever he is, he swerves into this subject. Those are themes that he comes back to. And I'm sure when he mentions it, I asked him, what did he speak about Shalosh Shoes? Ooh, he spoke about Yavdu for the, and I'm sure there's Bakum there, they roll their eyes in the back of their head, they look at their watch, they give a big yawn, they're trying to fight off the yawn. But you know something, after 120 years, they're going to say, my Rebbe used to say, my father used to tell me, what he used to say. Because if he had said it once, nobody remembered. But since he said it over and over and over again, so then it eventually pickled and sunk into the hearts of the people, the message that he was trying to get through. Another explanation, by the way, of Hu HaYomer is, I'll give the negative approach. What does it mean? It's not the negative, but the negative solution to what it means, Hu HaYomer. And it goes like this. Let's say there's a fellow, he gave a doctor, he gave an incredible demonstration with slides and video presentations on everything, on how bad it is smoking, evil, skull cross and bones, and the worst, and demonstrating and all kinds of medical information that people were overloaded with medical information. Anybody who heard that presentation would never touch one of those sticks again. That would be it. They would, they'd put it out and stamp it out. That would be the last puff. That was it.
Oh, right.
It was such a clear demonstration. But 2 days later, someone's walking in Manhattan and happened to see on a cold day, they're huddled out in front of one of the buildings. There's the doctor himself, puffing away. Someone said, Doc, is that you? He said, yes, 'tis I. He said, aren't you the one that gave that incredible presentation on how bad it is to smoke? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, but what are you doing here smoking? He goes, He says, that was, lecturing. That was presentation. That's not Lamaisa. I think it was Bertrand Russell who had said, Bertrand Russell was a famous ethicist, like the greatest ethicist in the world. Apparently he was caught in an uncompromising situation with a co-ed. I'm not going to get into details over here. We're in the base medrash. We're in the Sifrei Torah behind us. But kachaya, that's what happened. And when he was confronted, you're the greatest ethicist of our time, and thinker, and on the subject of morality and proper behavior. And his cavalier answer was, if I was a mathematician, would you expect me to be a triangle? Something wrong with that, So when it says Hu HaYomer, it means Hu Haya Omer. He was what he said. Not only did he say it a lot, but he was the exemplar. He was the paradigm of that idea. Wow. Isn't that Hu Haya Omer. He was what he said. Beautiful, huh? He wasn't a lecturer on the subject. He wasn't the subject. He was a living Lebedek Sefer Torah on that subject. Beautiful. Very nice, yeah? It's worth it to come here tonight. We could finish up right there. Beautiful. Okay. Maybe we should. That's it. So, now, but it says Rabbi Yaakov Omer. What does it mean, Rabbi Yaakov Omer? Okay? Rabbi Yaakov says. He says? This is Ammar. He said it. This is history. Someone's recording what Rabbi Yaakov said. Not Rabbi Yaakov says, he's saying. But since it's Divrei Torah is Chai v'Kayam, the person as if he's speaking it now. The Chazal tell us that when we quote somebody who's learning Torah, it's as if his lips are moving in the grave. It sounds like a very macabre idea. That's it's like we'll quote somebody, and then we'll go to the certified graveside of that person. We'll quote him, and and maybe we can detect some subterranean movement over there. So, whoa, it's true what the Chazal said. They weren't saying that Kapshuto, that's what's exactly happening, but it's another way of expressing the idea that the person is as if they're still speaking in this world. That when a person says Divrei Torah, when you quote somebody Divrei Torah, that the person is still alive and they're still speaking in this world. That's what it means. So, very interesting thing. The last words of the last prophet, amazing idea that said Malachi. The last words, it's the Haftorah, the finale of the Haftorah that we just said a couple of weeks back, right before Pesach and Shabbos HaGadol, is Hinei Anochi Sholech Lechem Es Eliyahu Hanavi. I'm going to send Elijah the prophet. Lifnei Bo Yom Hashem HaGadol. Before it comes, the day of Hashem HaGadol V'Hanora. That somehow at the end of times there's going to be a day which is Gadol V'Nora. What's Gadol V'Nora? Right? So Rav Aaron Kotler, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha, asked, he says, what's Gadol V'Norah? What is this, what is so great and awesome that comes at the end of days that's Gadol V'Norah? Right? He says, what could be more Norah than Yom Nora'ayim, than the days of awe, right, that we face once a year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, when it's decided, Mi Yecheh V'mi Yamus, who's going to live and who's going to die. Right? Ain't that something? Parnasaso shel Adam cuts of Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. That's why people instinctively, even if they don't know anything about it, they find themselves sitting or standing in some shul someplace, paying hundreds and hundreds and maybe thousands of dollars for the sisterhood, the brotherhood, the building fund, whatever it is, in order to have a seat where they're not even serving a meal, where they're not, just to hear some raspy horn of a shofar that's not even quite musical, not understanding the Morse code of what's being said, but they know they got to be there that day, because if you don't show up, that's the day for the job interview and the life interview, the life review for the whole year. That's Norah. So what happens at the end of time? That's Gadol V'Norah. What's more Norah than Hine Yom Hadin, when a person comes after 120 years to give an accounting, what type of parent, what type of neighbor, what type of friend, what type of father, what type of brother, what type of Oved Hashem, what type of Lomed Torah, what type of person were you, what type of being were you? Holy, decent. So what could be more awesome than the life review, than what happens to a person after 120 years? So listen to this. So he says like this, Rav Aaron Kotler, that what happens is, he says, let's say for example there was a person and his name was Rashi. And Rashi, I didn't think he lived quite 70 years, if I remember correctly. About 1,000 years ago, lived into his mid-60s. What's that? He was a father. He had a number of daughters. He was a wine merchant. He was a Rebbe. And he took good notes. Shows you how important it is to take good notes. And his copious, detailed notes that he took ended up becoming, after 120 years, he went from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, and Hashem provided him with the things he needed. And Baruch Hashem, he was a businessman. I guess business went good. Business sometimes maybe didn't go perfect all the time. Sometimes his Talmidim didn't follow. But he did what he could. Then later on, after 60 some odd years, he went to the next world. He had to give an accounting. What type of father, what type of neighbor, what type of friend, all the things that we spoke about. But since he took good notes, he married off his daughters to nice, fine Talmidei Chachamim who were able to critique his notes and to go over them and to review them and to establish through sort of attacking and verifying how valid and how clear his notes was. He opened up, he gave those notes, ended up becoming the key that we understand. Before there was a Talmud that had Rashi in the inside column, it would have been a closed book, and it would have remained in the British Museum in the archive someplace. But instead he gave the key, the running commentaries, Nabali Tosfos on the outside, his children and his grandchildren. And forget about Chumash and Tanakh, 24 Svarim of Tanakh. He gave the key to understanding and applying the oral Torah to the written Torah. So now the written Torah now comes to life. He is the key to understanding everything in Jewish hashkaf and everything in Jewish halacha and every word of Torah, of a Talmud Torah keneged kulam, and every kiyum of mitzvah, and every community and every person and individual who was doing any mitzvah for the next 1,000 years is all credited to Rashi. It's not only credited to Rashi. Ner le'echad, ner le'meya. It's not like if you have 50% of a company, or you have 51%, I can only have 49 left. It could be that you and I, we did a mitzvah together, we helped, and you encouraged somebody, and I encouraged somebody, and they became the Shomer Torah mitzvah, so you can get 100% stock owner, and I can be 100% stock owner in my high. What's the difference? It's not that one doesn't take away from the other. If I light a candle, and you light a candle, my candle doesn't take away from your candle. It's not like a pizza pie that if you take half and I take half, so if I take 9 slices, if I take 7 slices, there's only 1 slice left for somebody else. It doesn't work that way. So Rashi for the next 1,000 years is credited with every mitzvah that everybody's doing for the next 1,000 years. It's unbelievable. Let's think about that for a second. They have a building in Manhattan where I think they have like these numbers that are flipping all over the place, where they're accruing the national debt. I think they're using 4 buildings now. Okay, and I think they need the rest of the buildings in Manhattan to keep up with what's going on. But you just think about it for a second. What does the sky look like? The numbers, the registration of Rashi's accomplishment, over 1,000 years. That's Gadol V'Norah. The ongoing ripple effects of the good, of the accomplishments of a person over the course of so many generations. And he says, that now we'll take a look at somebody's name was Karl Marx, okay? And Karl Marx decided, I think he was an Eichel of the Noda Yehuda, and he came from a rabbinical family. He decided to make up his own religion, a communist manifesto, something that attacked religion at its root, reduced man to an economic creature, dialectic materialism, and suddenly he gave license to a Lenin, who gave license to a Stalin, who sent 39 million people to the Gulag, and also spun off now to Mao Zedong and others who killed between 70 and 100 million Chinese and put a blanket on a quarter of humanity and stamped out the name of God. And you can imagine the ever-widening path of darkness and godlessness that comes out, and destruction that comes out from that terrible accomplishment. And the heshbon, the calculation after 120 years is gadol v'nora, not 120 years, at the end of times is gadol v'nora, when the final buzzer rings, right? So that's what we're talking about over here. So the Shlomo Melech, who is the wisest of all men, says, Pri tzaddik eitz chayim. Why? Because the fruit of a tzaddik is a tree of life. Isn't that beautiful? Is Pri tzaddik eitz chayim. The fruit of a tzaddik is an eitz chayim, is a tree of life. Because a tzaddik understands that I'm only going to be around for whatever, let's say, 70, 80 productive years at most, and then 120 years, and then that's it. It's over. So you leave behind children, you leave behind students, you leave behind svarim. There's very few gedolim over the course of history left behind students and svarim and children. It's usually one or two of the three at best, and only a few of the Chassam Sofer, a few left behind all three. They say there was a meeting one time that the Chofetz Chaim met up with the Alta from Slobodka. And the Alta from Slobodka, listen, unbelievable, just to try to imagine who was the Alta from Slobodka. The Alta from Slobodka, his Talmidim were not less than, listen to this lineup. And he was the third generation from Rabbi Yosef Salanter. Rabbi Yosef Salanter was the father of the Muslim movement. Had a student, Reb Simcha Zisel, the Alta from Kelm. I think we had a student who was the Alta from Slobodka, Reb Nosson Tzvi Finkel, Zecher Tzadik Levracha. And he has his students probably saved American Jewry, right? Non-Hasidic American Jewry. They were, everybody maybe except Reb Moshe Feinstein. His students were Rav Aaron Kotler, Zecher Tzadik Levracha. I'm gonna Zecher Tzadikim Levracha of the ones I'm going to mention. Okay, Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky. Okay, how are we doing so far? Reb Hutner, right? From Chaim. How about Reb Ruderman from Baltimore? Right, not too bad. How about Rabbi Davis from Mountaindale? Reb David Leibowitz, who was the father of Chenach Leibowitz from the Chofetz Chaim. Those were just a few. Those were just a few of the influences. His Talmidim also influenced the ones who Isaac Sher who came after him, ended up influencing Rabbi Victor Miller and others. There were kama influences that they had in the world. I mean, can you imagine? That's what the Alta from Slobodka. It's startling. So he meets up with the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim is more alive today than he was during his lifetime. Isn't that something? Right? Talk about Pri Tzaddik Eitz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim is more alive today than he was during his lifetime. Lifetime. What's that?
Demonstration of what you said, like who Omer.
Right. He was what he says. So this is exactly. So he wasn't just. He just didn't write a sefer here and there. The amazing thing is the Chazal say that if a person runs away from honor, honor runs after them. If a person runs after honor, honor runs away from them. So I think it was the Chofetz Chaim himself who asked. He says, "What's the difference? Either way, you don't get honor. either running away from it. Here it comes. Let's get out of here. Or let me see if I can catch it. Either way, people are pursuing it, or it's pursuing them. But nobody gets honor." And he says, "Yeah." He says the difference is the nafkamin is. He says achrei mos. Last week's parsha, kadoshim emor. That when the person passes away, then if he's running away from it, it catches up with him, and then finally it's known. When the tree falls, then we know how great the tree is. Then we know how large the tree is. Okay, so the premise is that the Chofetz Chaim, who wrote so many svarim, and practical, beautiful, amazing svarim, And the Mishnah Berurah is more used in Sefer Chafetz Chaim, and his picture is iconic. Just as a symbol of, don't talk lashon hara. It's a terrible thing to do. The Chafetz Chaim became, the symbol of, what not to do. Think about it. It's amazing. So he meets up with the Alter from Slobodka, and the Alter from Slobodka says, "Ech Makana Zayin, I'm so jealous of you, of your Svarim." The Mishnah Berurah. It's probably the most used sefer, probably the most used and practical sefer that's around today. That's in yeshiva, Chasidus. It's incredible, the practicality of it. And then you forget about the Sefer Chafetz Chaim and the minor Svarim and Zechel and Miriam and everything. Unbelievable. He says, I'm jealous of your Svarim. And the Chafetz Chaim says, I'm jealous of you. He says, I write Svarim. He says, you make people. That's what he said. I write Svarim, you make people. It's unbelievable. So you have to imagine for a second who was the Chafetz Chaim, who was the Alter from Slobodka. The Gemara tells us there was a person, his name was Resh Lakish. We're going to get to our Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Don't think we're not done yet. This is all having to do with Rabbi Yaakov Omer. We're going to get to our Mishnah. There's a what's that? Resh Lakish met up with Rabbi Yochanan. Resh Lakish, we know, was an all-time bandit, right? He was a bum. He was a hood. And he was looking for people to mug. He was the head of the bandits. And suddenly he sees Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara had portrayed Rabbi Yochanan as a beautiful man. He stood by the mikveh so that the ladies could have a picture of Yofi, whatever didn't disturb his Yesahara. They should have a picture of what his beauty looked like before they would go to the mikveh, so somehow would it influence the type of children that they would have. He was the poster child of beauty. Although the Gemara says he was very portly, and he was bald, and he had no beard. I remember my Rebbe saying, it was a different portrait of, didn't look like nowadays you want to see what the world wants to portray as handsome. The person looks like some kind of a like a killer or something like that, like a murderer, like a psycho. So especially you've got some tattoos and greased up. So I think they were talking about radiant inner beauty. In any case, had little to do with with all these other types of foolish things. So Rabbi Yochanan was bathing himself, and along comes Resh Lakish. Gemara says this was their first meeting. He comes leaping across the river. He sees this vulnerable guy, his cloak with his wallet and everything, his pants and everything hanging there while he's toveling in the river, and he comes bounding across. Look up in the air, a bird, a plane. He sees it. And he knows this guy's coming. He's going to pounce on him. Maybe he's going to throttle him a little bit, beat him up a little bit, mug him, and take his clothing. I remember my Rebbe pointing out very clearly to us that an amazing thing, that when he sees this fellow flying through the air, coming towards him, right, knowing that he's in mortal danger, or at least his clothing, his stuff is going to be stolen, he doesn't yell, "Thief! Police!" I don't want to yell too loud. He might end up with help! Oh! He doesn't yell anything like that. He yells, "Ooh!" I don't know if he said the "ooh," but I'm putting that in for a dramatic effect. He says, "Chelcha li'araisa." He says, your portion belongs for Torah. That's what he says to him. Your portion belongs for Torah. That's something? That's what he didn't say thief. He says, "Oi." He looked and said, "Potential. I see potential over here." And that's what hurt him, to see a guy who was wasting his strength and wasting his talent and his athleticism and his energy on shtuyot, on stealing stuff from people. So when he lands on the ground, Resh Lakish has a retort. He's not a foolish man. We see later on in life, he's not a foolish man. And he says to him, your beauty is for a woman. That's what he tells him. Doesn't mean that, to consort with women. The commentators explain that means that your beauty was wasted on a man. It would have been more appropriate that beauty should have been put for a woman. Now, what was his answer? I didn't see this anyplace, but I want to say on my own, a small chidush, that what he was maybe trying to say is, you're saying I could become a Talmud Chacham? I could become something? I could make something out of myself? He says, this is the way I am, this is the way I was born, and this is what I am. I am what I am. You have to accept it, just the way I am. He says, just like you can't change your gender, I can't change my nature. That's who I am. Like, you got stuck. Beauty, that beauty with a man in a man's body, with these parts, so I can't change my nature. And that's how we answered him back. You say, my portion for Torah. Baloney. That's what he's telling him. Rabbi Yochanan was no fool. Sometimes it's not that the person can't do it, sometimes it's that the person doesn't want to do it. That's a question of motivation. And he tells him the following thing. If you think I'm beautiful, he says, I have a sister. She's even more beautiful than I. If you'll commit yourself to learning Torah, he says, I'll give you my sister's hand in marriage. Takes like, yeah? Deal. And he agrees to it. The Gemara says he went to go back across the river. He didn't make it halfway, kerplunk, because he'd already appropriated his energies now to Torah. That meant that he means business. I just wanted to be aside. I would like to have been there when he went home to read the shidduch to his sister. He says, I got a nice guy. I got a guy for you. Tell me a little bit about him. Mom wants to hear. Mom, come out of the kitchen. What is it? Is he a learning boy? Not yet, not quite. Is he a working boy? Well, I wouldn't say working. Something like, I don't know. But he's he's got simchas achayim, whatever. So you can only imagine that it would have been difficult. It would have been difficult to give that one over nowadays. But they saw something. He saw something over there, and he was able to convince his sister, and they got married. Now it's hard to turn the page. Anybody learns a little Gemara, you can't turn the page 2 or 3 times without running into multiple times. You're ready. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. They became not only brother-in-law to each other, but they became chavrusas, and they're gracing the pages all over the Talmud. Their discussions are setting the standard for halacha all over the place. Unbelievable. Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, unbelievable. So a couple of years ago, I was invited to come speak in Lakewood, Ir HaKodesh. We'd go there for Shabbos to stay by friends, and since people know, Rabbi Lam is coming, so they have a ladies' shir. So I get a ladies' shir. This choshev shul up in the Ezras Nashim in the afternoon. So I get a Shabbos afternoon nap, speak to ladies, give a nice shir. And one time they said, coming, you're coming. Oh, there's a group of the Balabatim that are making a Siyam HaShas, not in the same cycle as the Siyam HaShas, and to honor it on Shabbos, they're making a huge kiddush, and maybe Bimkom, the Rav was willing to step aside, that you'll come and you'll speak to the Olam. We're talking about like a packed room filled with Talmidei Chachamim. Now, what am I going to say? I told you before, I came from Westchester. Who am I? I identify with Reish Lakish more than I identify with Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish from the beginning, not Reish Lakish from the end. And I said, so I said, okay, here we go, and okay, yes. I said, okay, fine. My mind is spinning. What can I tell these people in Lakewood? What can I say? So I told them the following thing. Listen to this. That when I was yet a bacher, there was an old Jew who lived in our community. I think it was maybe the first year that I was married. It was like 28 years ago. There was an old Jew. I don't think that his head was above the bottom of the stender over here. His name was Rabbi Aronson. He was somewhere he passed away in his late 80s. I remember coming to yeshiva with his walking stick, especially on Yom Kippur, on Tisha B'Av. And although he couldn't see the page in front of him, he would correct the Balkare. He was one of these old European Jews. He was a Rav in Hartford, Connecticut. He's written Svarim. He'd written Svarim on Masechta Shkalim. When people go through the Daf Yomi cycle and they go to Shkalim, his is one of the most used and appreciated Perushim. Beautiful. It's a huge Talmud Chacham. I remember having once heard that he had learned by the Alta from Slobodka. I remember having heard it once, but I never wanted to go speak to anybody like that because I don't want to waste his time, and I always felt like I'm a dog barking compared to trying to talk. You ever had that feeling when you go to talk to somebody? Oh, hi, Rabbi. What are you asking me? Why am I? So I never had a conversation. Never had 2 words with him. But one day, I'm sitting at a barber shop back in the day when I still needed haircuts, and I'm sitting here. And in strides into the room with his grandson helping him is Rabbi Aronson, and he plops down in the seat next to me. I had a sefer with me, Eliyahu Rabbah, Eliyahu Zutra, and we started looking into the sefer. And I go, Rabbi Aronson's here. I stood up and I started asking him some questions about the Zutra Rabbah, and I saw His English was God's fine. He was able to explain, give a nice parish. What's the difference between that? I don't remember exactly what he said, but thank you. And I said, Rabbi Aronson, now that we have a few minutes, till we get to the next haircut person, next chair opens up. I said, Rabbi Aronson, I heard that Rabbi Aronson saw the altar from Slovakia. He says, yeah. That's true, yeah. Wow. I'm looking at somebody. I'm sitting with somebody who saw the altar from Slovakia. By the way, one of my sons is married to a young lady that her grandfather is 102 years old, and he learned with the Chofetz Chaim. He's clear, he's lucid, young, a Talmud Chacham. He didn't learn at the Yeshiva Chofetz Chaim. He learned with the Chofetz Chaim for 4 years. He remembers the Chofetz Chaim. One of the last people on the planet. My son is able to squeeze stories out of him. He likes to talk to my son. He comes home with it every once in a while. Things that he saw, things that he heard. So I felt at that time. I'm talking with somebody. I'm living. I'm talking. I'm touching history. Listen to this. So I said to him like this. I said, "Did Rabbi Aronson, saw the altar of Slovakia?" He said, "Sure." I said, "Really?" I said, was Rabbi Aronson there when Rabbi Aaron Kotler was there and when Rabbi Yaakov was there? He said, I was there the day they arrived. Now, I'm sitting telling all this chevra over here from Lakewood, I was there the day that, Rabbi Aaron Kotler arrived. Huh? How about that? All of Lakewood, which is the largest growing city in America. They add a whole nother class, to a whole nother yeshiva's worth of a class every year is born into the city, and people moving in, it's bustling. Blian hara. So he tells me that he was there the day that they arrived, and I said, "Wow!" Listen to how when I hear stupidity. I said, "Wow!" I said, "That must have been a big celebration." He looked at me like I fell from outer space. Like what? And I said, "Two big tzaddikim like that, arriving in yeshiva." He looked at me like he said, "Tzaddikim, it's okay." He says they were bachurim. They were bachurim. He was chuckling. They were bachurim. He says, "I didn't see anything." He says, "Nobody saw anything. They were bachurim." Then he got serious for a moment and he says, "The altar, he saw something. The altar saw something. I didn't see it. The altar was like Rabbi Yochanan, who looked and he saw Helcha li'araisa. He says, your portion belongs for Torah." Isn't that unbelievable? He was able to look inside and to see that there's something in there, that there's greatness buried inside. And everybody else says, see Bachram. But he looked inside and he said that there's something over here, that there's godless Adam, there's greatness of man that's buried in it. It's unbelievable. Let's think about that. I was at least able to deliver, that point of seeing potential. Okay, that the altar from Slovakia saw something in Rabbi Aaron Kotler, and here we are today. Okay, whatever the rest of the point was. So it says Rabbi Yaakov Omer. That means he's still speaking today. He was wise enough to leave us a wise insight. Listen to the insight now. Rabbi Yaakov Omer. HaMahalach b'derech. You'll see in a second why this is a difficult mission to understand. The person's going on the way. V'shona and learning. Umafzik mimishnaso. And he interrupts his learning. V'omer, and he says, Manoah ilan zeh. How beautiful is this tree? Manoah nir how beautiful is this plowed field? Amro kasav alav, the verse speaks about him, Ki'ilu mischai benafsho, as if the person had put himself in mortal danger. Right? Malal v'kasav ki'ilu mischai benafsho, the person put himself into mortal danger. The insurance company is not covering this one if there's an accident. Even Geico is not going to cover him. No 15-minute call is going to save you from your problems if you looked up and said, what a beautiful tree, what a beautiful field, when you were going along the way and learning. And you said, oh, beautiful tree, beautiful field. So I remember once having heard on an ancient Rabbi Miller tape, somebody asked a question that Rabbi Miller gave an answer to that opened up the key to this mission, because it always bothered me, and it bothered everybody. What's so wrong? What's so wrong? What's so schlecht? The person sitting, they look at the beautiful tree. It's a beautiful time of the year, especially now, this time of the year. Look at how beautiful the trees are. So I'm not supposed to admire it. I'm not supposed to see the beauty of creation. I'm not supposed to enjoy there's a whole shar in Sefer Chavos Levavos that's called Shar Bechina, that invites every human being, every living Jew, every person to come and take a look at a Kadosh Baruch Hu's world, because that's the quick way to find out about a Kadosh Baruch Hu. You investigate and you see the tov, you see the good, you see the chachma, you see the power, you see the unity in everything that Hashem created, no matter where you're going to put your eye. We could talk about it for 1,000,000 years. Right? Rabbi Miller used to talk about a piece of fruit, an orange. Right? 50% of his lectures were on this one subject of Niflois Habari, the wonders of creation, based upon the mandate from the Sefer Chavos Levavos in Shar Bechina. We'll take a look at the creation. Ma poil kel. Koyach hapoil benifal. The power of the action, the Zohar says, the actor is in his action. You want to see the artist, you want to understand the artist? Look at his artistry. Ein Sayer Kelokeinu. Elokim Asa Sheyirim Elefanav HaKadosh Baruch Hu made that you should fear Him. Come to Yiras Hashem through everything we'll take a look at. Is shouting, has the signature of the artist of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in it. So what's wrong? Rabbi Miller used to talk about an orange. He said, take a look at a beautiful orange. When it's green, it's hiding amongst the green leaves of the tree before it turns into an orange. So you try to take it off the tree. First of all, you can't find it because it's camouflaged. It's hidden amongst the green of the leaves. Then finally, if you find it and you want to get it off the tree, you have to wrestle with the tree to pull it off. You pull it off, and the peel doesn't come off so easy. And then if you bite it, it's bitter. You throw away the seed, and the seed is too immature to produce another tree. So it was too soon. It wasn't mavashal, it wasn't cooked, it wasn't ripe yet. But when it's ready, orange. Bing! Right? The toaster goes bing! Right? The oven goes, the microwave says bing! It's ready. Suddenly the color orange shouts out. And only human beings see colors. Don't think that bulls see colors when they're shaking the red thing. They see the movement. I think some arachnids, some type of spiders see colors. And primates see some vague colors. But the whole world could have been a black and white world, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a color for human beings. Think about it. Google it. Cha-cha it. Find out if it's true. It's true. So what happens is, he said, you take a look at that orange, and you take it off the tree, it goes right into your hand. The peel comes off easy. The fruit now, the seed is ready to produce another tree. Isn't it unbelievable? And then when you peel off the fruit, you take a look and you see that inside the fruit, it's white on the inside. Why is it white on the inside if it's orange on the outside? Same thing if you go to drink from an orange juice container. Nobody can put anything more beautiful and appealing on the outside of an orange juice container than the picture of what? A slice of an orange or an orange tree or an orange grove. Maybe one Krasdale has like a little blue stripe on it. Fools, You're going to try to outsmart the colors and the genius, marketing genius of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what happens is, but when you finish the orange juice, has maybe orange on the outside, but when you get to the inside, you open up the orange juice container, pry it open, look inside, see if there's any green, any orange or advertising on the inside. The answer is no. Because it's only put there in order to entice your eyes. It was put there only for you. I only have eyes for you. Eyes were put there only that a Kodesh Baruch Hu should be able to invite you to take more of the orange and partake more of the orange. Isn't that something? Isn't that beautiful? Rabbi Miller had said something beautiful. He said that bright fruits, only fruits that are bright in color, are ready to be eaten immediately. Fruits and vegetables. Anything which is drab and dull has to be cooked. Right? Because the impulsivity is to be attracted to something which is bright and shiny. So somebody asked him, you can ask a kasha from just since the Kodesh Baruch Hu is stapel b'raisa bal alma. Kodesh Baruch Hu looks into the Torah and created the world. You can ask a kasha from the world, just like you can ask a kasha from a Mishnah or from a pasuk in Chumash, right? And someone asked him, so Rebbe, if that's so, then what about a cantaloupe? Cantaloupe is dull on the outside. And he answered on the spot. He says, a cantaloupe is not a one-person fruit. right? It's not a fruit, not a one-portion food, It's meant to be cut in half. You take out the seeds, husband and wife sitting there with a scoop of cottage cheese, Woolworths on the inside or whatever, or you cut it in quarters and use it with a maraschino cherry and a toothpick as an entree or whatever it is for a Shabbat brachas. That's not for one person. Then you see that bright orange new moon smile, but not, but closed, it's drab because one takes a bite out of a cantaloupe. It's not until it's cut open and now it's ready to be eaten. Huh? Beautiful. So there's an answer to everything. I was wondering, what are eyebrows about? Yeah? What's the purpose of eyebrows? Everybody has eyebrows. I have daughters. They're busy with their eyebrows all the time. Eyebrows is a whole avoda. You got the break bridge, and you got there's a whole the unibrow. Whoa. But everybody has eyebrows, different shapes. Just like people have different shaped hairs. They have widow's peaks, and some people their hair naturally goes back, and some of it's curly and it's kinky. Everybody has eyebrows that the eyebrows go out. Right? Check it out. The eyebrow pattern goes out. Why is that? Why is that? And the answer is, right? Because everything is a chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and everything is the chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kulam b'chachma asisa. He said that when a person, the pasuk says, "B'zeh sapecha toichel lechem," you'll eat by the sweat of your brow. So the water is coming down when a person is working hard, and little rivulets of water coming down, and they're heading towards the eyes. Now the eyeball, 80% of what we perceive to get through the day is coming through visual acuity. It's going to rain, it's going to snow, it's cold outside, looks snowy, what do we mean? Is this guy safe? Is this room safe? Who's that coming over here? Oh my gosh, 80% of the information that we're getting to make it through the day is really coming through visual acuity. And the eye is a very delicate piece of machinery. If you get a little drop into it, a little film on the lens, that's why we're blinking every 20 seconds or so, and there's a little dust, there's a special, like the nodules on the front of the car when you press the thing, that are coming, and it's refilling the special solution in order to clean off our eyes. And that's why the eye is put in this deep socket over here. It's not on the forehead like, oh, I'm blind. Okay, what do I do with the rest of my life now? So it's not on the edge of my toe. It's in this deep crevice between these two rocks. And this soft little gel ball, 1 and 2. I can see depth perception. So now what happens is when the person's sweating or they're perspiring, and the silt, the dust, and everything that's kicking up is now coming in those little rivulets of water, and it's going to head right towards my eye, and it'll irritate my eye and maybe put me out of commission. So what happens is, before, like you have on the house, the gutters and the leaders, first thing it does, first line of defense is it hits the eyebrows, and it gets carried off and delivered to the side over here, down to the temples, right? Or if it hits the break bridge and it goes down the nose. If something happens to get through, then the eyelashes are also like hoods in front of the windows, and you give a little blink and it flashes off the eye. Nothing flows directly into the windows. Nothing flows directly into the eyes. Ain't that beautiful? You can look around the creation. So somebody asked Rabbi, this is all in order to amplify the question. Somebody asked Rabbi Miller, what's so terrible? And the answer that he gave, said you give so many lectures on the Floor Sabori, and the answer that he gave was on this Mishnah. He says that there was a chassan and kala, and she was talking to him, and he was talking to her, and he went into one of his long diatribes, the chassan, blah, 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 sweet nothings, he's going on. Usually when you're talking to somebody, you like to hear a little something, something on the other side. After a few moments, he hears like a blank. The phone, maybe I lost the call. The call's not dropped. It's still open. There's a line there. There's still open line. Hello? Hello, hello. He says, Malka, are you there? Malka, what's going on? Malka. Is it a medical emergency? Should I run over there? What is it? I don't know. He's shouting on the phone for 15 minutes. Malka, are you there? Malka. Finally, 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, she picks up the phone. Oh, Chaim, how are you, Chaim? Okay, everything all right? Malka, are you okay? First of all, you okay? Yes. What's going on? Where were you? He says. He says, you were gone for 20 minutes. I was talking on the phone. Did you drop the phone? You went away? She says, no, I was here the whole time. He said, well, where? What? She goes, oh, I'm sorry. She goes, you know that beautiful diamond ring that you got me? So while we were talking, the light came into the room on such an angle, so I became sort of hypnotized mesmerized by the bespeckling, of the sparkle of the diamond with the light coming in from the outside, and suddenly I fell into like a hypnotic reverie, And then 20 minutes later, I heard your voice muffled into the distance over there. I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to space out like that. He says, I have in mind to break the shidduch. I hate to say it like that. I said over to a ladies group one time, and she says, she should break the shidduch because he's too makbid, okay. But, I have in mind to break it. He said, why? What did I do wrong? He said, I thought you had the right hashkafas. I thought you had the right outlook on life. Because what's so wrong? He says, I gave you the ring to remind you of me as a symbol, to remind you of me when I'm not around. He says, but when I'm talking to you, who needs the ring? I mean, who needs the ring when I'm talking to you? It's like the lady is walking down the street with a baby carriage, and she got a cute little baby in there, and some woman comes along and peeks inside. Oh, what a cute baby! And the mother says, "You think she's cute? You should see the pictures, right?" And she pulls out a sleeve of pictures. How could the pictures be more cute than the baby himself? So here, you're going to get so excited about the ring, and me. You leave in the background over here. I get pushed to the back of the line. So Rabbi Miller says, let's go back to the Mishnah. It says, Rabbi Yaakov says, HaMahalach b'derech, the person's going on the way, v'shona, and he's learning. What's he doing? He's learning. What learning means? Learning means that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is talking to him. That's what learning. That's what we find out over here. That when a person's learning, that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is speaking. The Chassan is speaking. Umafsik mimishnaso, the person interrupts his learning. V'amar, and he says, Ma'na ilan zeh, how beautiful is this tree? Ma'na nir zeh, how beautiful is this plowed field? Amra kasav ke'ilu mischay ben nafsho, because he interrupted learning, the chassan was talking to him. And he says, what a beautiful ring. And echinami, we learned out two things over here. Kodesh Baruch Hu filled the world with diamonds. And Sharbachin is saying, like Avram Avinu, go and inspect and take a look and see the tov. See the unity, see the power, see the wisdom in every diamond, and understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to get our attention. He wants to give us a message. But once you get to Torah and you're getting the message, then what do you need to be studying and taking a look at the diamonds for? Because the message is more important than the symbolic attraction that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you in order to give you the message. That's the message. That's the main line. And when we're learning Torah, it's an aspect of hearing of Kodesh Baruch Hu. And it's something. It's beautiful. It opens up both directions because we see what the creation is.
You're still blessing Hashem by looking at all the beautiful things He does.
But when you're mafsik mimishnaso, that's the thing. Right? If the person was Yoshev Batel, wouldn't be a problem. If he's looking for Kodesh Baruch Hu, if it was an idle moment. The Chovos HaLevavos is talking about also when the person's not, he's in the bathroom, or he's not doing something else, or he's going on the way, but he's not showing, he's not learning. Here the person was showing, he was learning. Learning is the person, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is whispering to him, he's talking to him. And he interrupts, he doesn't appreciate what the chashivas, doesn't appreciate what the importance of a line, of a word of Torah is. Now, let's hear something that the Piyazetna Rebbe says. I don't have the quote in front of me. From Sefer called Derech HaMelech, that he wrote before the war. And he says the following amazing thing. He says it's possible, Bizman Hazeh. It's in commentaries on Shemos. He says it's possible, Bizman Hazeh, for a person to achieve Nevuah, for a person to achieve prophecy. Afilu Bizman Hazeh. Isn't that something? He says, but not Nevuah, like from the time before Bias Sheni. We have prophets who could tell about things that are going to come in the future and these type of things. Since Tanakh was closed, we don't have people who are telling this futuristic things anymore. We don't. We've been a non-profit organization for the last 2,400 years. Okay? But since then, he says, nowadays he says, even afilu b'zman hazeh, 2,400 years later, we can still have access to Nevuah. This is unbelievable. And how is that? He says, through Shmiya, through listening to Torah. Through learning Torah, which is Shema Yisrael. Look, the whole Torah is based upon Shema. Listen. V'hayim Shemoah. Im Shemata B'koli. If you're going to listen to my voice. We write on the front door, we write on the back door. Listen, Hashem says. The person sits and he learns and he listens to Torah. Wow. It becomes transformational to him. So when a person is looking, so there's a different way. He says, how does it happen? He says, sometimes a person is looking into a pasuk of Chumash. Sometimes a person is going through a Sefer Tehillim. Sometimes a person is looking at a holy Sefer. That's what he says. And suddenly something catches his attention. He says, and it shakes him, and it microwaves his neshama. It doesn't let go until it transforms him into a different person. Right? A person gets an insight into something, and he says, what's happening here is you've seen the pasuk before. You've seen that Rashi before. Suddenly, it attacks you, and it changes you, and it makes you into something, different. It gives you a new set of glasses, a new window into the world. He says, what's happening over here? He says, it's like the Kohen Gadol who's looking into the Urim V'Tumim, and since he has Ruach HaKodesh, he can tell what's going on. Another Kohen standing on the side, who's looking on, without Ruach HaKodesh, he sees lights flashing, or he doesn't see lights flashing, but it doesn't affect him. Right? They're both looking at the same thing. Two people looking at the same phenomena. One person gets something out of it, and some person doesn't get something out of it. Right? So therefore, he says that's an aspect of that the Torah is talking to each individual in a different way. If I would give everybody here a Sefer Tehillim and say, let's reconvene in 52 weeks, we'll reconvene it in one more year, and I'll give everybody a highlighter. Here, take a highlighter, right, and a Sefer Tehillim, but highlight 52 Pesukim. And we just spend all week long looking, going through Tehillim. Don't zug Tehillim. Don't zug, say, but go through it, sip it like hot tea. Go through it and take a look and find 52, one each week, that zips you, that zings you, that sings to you. Right? Habatech b'Hashem chesed Yisov Avenu. Habatech b'Hashem chesed Yisov Avenu. Habatech b'Hashem chesed Yisov Avenu. And you find 52. What do you think the chances are that after 52 weeks we all come back and say, okay, let's submit our 52 psukim. Which one grabbed you? Which one grabbed you? What do you think the chances are? That even if we have 1,000 people in this room, we don't have that, okay? But let's say even if we did, that there's going to find any two Sifrei Tehillim that have the same 52 psukim that are underlined. What do you think the chances are? And the chances are not likely, mathematically impossible. I think. Right? Think of how improbable it is. Only one time I remember in my entire career coming to shul that they ever called up somebody by the same name, and two of the same guy, and two guys came up, started striding to the Torah.
My father.
So I don't remember it ever happening. Don Ben Moshe. I was in a program in Palm Beach for Rosh Hashanah, and two Israeli fellas, started walking to the Torah. Oh, me, him, But that was the only time. How many times have we been to shul and we hear it, Monday, Thursday, Shabbos, Monday, Thursday, Shabbos. That hardly ever happens. That this one with the same name as and the father in the shul, and there's only a limited amount of names. What do you think the likelihood, the mathematical and the answer is it's not. And the reason is, this is what we ask for 3 times a day when we back up from Shemon Esrei. Right? I was waiting until I came to the Siyam Shas, and I nudged my son because I said, that's what I've been saying. That's what I've been saying. How many times you hear different speeches that are around, and then when we back up from Shemon Esrei, every day, 3 times a day, we say, V'sein chelkeinu b'sarasecha, give us our portion in Torah. What does it mean, our portion in Torah? There's one thing to learn. You learn through Daf Yomi. Beautiful. There's another type of learning where you're learning through the sugi of the Parsha Shvuah. But your Parsha Shvuah has a certain subjectivity to it. You're going to see something over there that I'm not going to see. And it's going to infect you, and it's going to affect you, and it's going to change you in a way that it's not going to change anybody else. We're not going to see the same thing, even if we try to see the same thing. And that's a chelik of V'sein chelkeinu b'sarasecha, our portion in Torah. That we're listening and we're shopping to hear what is the Torah teaching us. What is the Torah? We have Nevi'im, we have the words of Nevi'im, and the words of Nevi'im are talking to us afilu b'zman hazeh. Ain't that something? They say there was a little boy. Just one story and we'll finish up in a minute. I'm asking a question, we'll finish up. There was a little boy. I once heard a story, and his father left home, abandoned home in Israel. No father. Left. Up and left. The boy was sitting home. The mother felt incapable of taking care of her own little bubble, her own child. So she passed the child on to the grandparents. She was not so religious, and the parents were a little bit more, a little bit more traditional, misoret, whatever it is. And so they figured, they at least appreciated that if we send the kid to yeshiva, so he'll get a little bit of, some vitamins. He'll get some, moral fiber. So they plopped him into yeshiva. So he got kicked from here to there. Now he's sitting in yeshiva. How interested can he be in what's going on in yeshiva? He's looking at the windows, a little crack in the window. He's watching the grass, and he's watching, the movement of the trees. And he can't wait for school to be over. And he doesn't even know what he's going home to once school is over. He's miserable. He's despondent. Everybody's talking. The words are going through him like empty calories. Yeah. Then one day, his Rebbe's telling the students, they ask him a question, and they're learning. And Parshas V'yigash, Yehuda draws close, and he says, "What's this going to do to my father, your son? If you keep Ben Yomin, my father, your servant, my father, your servant." He says over 5 times, and then finally, Yosef can't hold himself back anymore, and he says these famous words. The Rebbe asks this question, "Ani Yosef," because he has to tell him, "I'm Yosef. I'm Yosef." Okay, fine. He couldn't, for some reason, he had to reveal his identity at that moment. Not so easy to understand. But then he asks. He even couldn't hold himself back. He had to send the Mitzrayim out. But then he asked the question, he said, "Ha'od Avichai, is my father still alive?" Not so easy to understand the question. Why do you have to ask him, "Ha'od Avichai"? He just heard Yehuda telling him, Mesiachas Vitumo, innocently, that your father's still alive. What do you have to ask him, is my father still alive? Of course, Yaakov is alive. He kept on telling him, this is going to drive a death knell into the heart of Yaakov, my father, Yaakov, my servant, my father, your servant, my father, your servant. He said it 5 times, and he heard it through an interpreter, and he lost 10 years of his life for having heard it and not having whatever. So he heard it. Of course Yaakov is alive. Ha'od Avichai, is my father alive? Not so easy to answer the question, is my father still alive? The Rebbe asked the question, why do you have to say that? Students are there scratching their head, thinking, nobody has an answer. Suddenly this little boy in the back who never participates raises his hand. The Rebbe says, "Shimmy, you have to go to the bathroom?" He said, No, I know the answer to the question, Rebbe. He said, "You know the answer to the question?" Everybody it catches everybody's attention. Well, what do you say? What is it? And he says, of course he knew that Yaakov was alive. But maybe what he really meant was, Ha'od Avichai. Is my father still alive? Does he still think about me? And anybody who understood the particulars of this boy's difficult home life and his situation realized that this boy had an insight, such a beautiful insight into a letter Yud, in a Chiddush in Torah. It's unbelievable. Think about it, that he was able to zero in and understood something that's quite amazing. When I heard this, it shook me up. Because so many years I'm giving seminars with people, and people become convinced that there's a Torah. They become convinced that Hashem is real, and it must be mathematically, scientifically, to the Western mind, and you can prove it empirically. But then they walk home and they still feel a distance. They wonder, B'hu Eli, B'chai Goli, does he care about me? Is Hashem still involved with my life? Does Hashem care about me? Ha'od Avichai, is my father still alive? What a beautiful, beautiful insight. Ha'od Avichai. So a person sometimes has an insight because of the particulars of the situation. They could see a certain color. I'm not saying you throw in your own interpretation, like a valid insight, a valid understanding that doesn't change halacha. The Or Chaim says a person can come up with a beautiful insight, into something. I could share with you all night long and talk to you about it. So one pasuk can change the hue, can change the color, can change the complexion of all of life, and the way you experience life, the way you understand things, the way you understand your situation. In your situation can help you understand something in Torah. So hamahalach b'derech, the person is going on the way, and he's learning. Umafsik mimishna, so when he interrupts from his learning, from his own learning. V'omer mana ilan zeh, mana nir zeh. Beautiful field, beautiful tree. Amar kasek ki ilam mischai benasho. One last question. Why a near? Why a elan? Why a tree? And why a plowed field? It could have said perach, right? It could have said pri, right? It could have just said and told us one. It said elan. So, right? We said you employ our Gemara, if it would have said, if it told me elan, what would I have to know near for? If I had no near, then what I have to know Elon for. I looked all over the place. I never saw a parish on it. I never even saw the question asked. But I'm entitled to ask, right? Just like I can ask about eyebrows, I can ask about Torah itself, a mission of Pirkei Avot. They were sparing in their words. Chesed, Gemilas Chesed, right? So what do you have to do? So I was thinking like this. That if a person, if you take a look, maybe for the same reason, that when you go to Jewish homes all over the world, you always see two types of pictures on the wall. Almost only two types of pictures. Sometimes somebody will have a nice, pastoral scene. But most of the time you go into Jewish homes, you always see pictures of Gedolim Tzadikim. Let your eyes see the tea. So you have a picture of the Chavetz Chaim. Don't speak Lashon Hara. We had in Yeshiva one that looked like no matter where you moved in the dining room, he looked like he's looking at us. It was like out of a, whatever. He's watching you. And then people have pictures of Rav Moshe, of Lubavitcher Rebbe, you name it. Right? And then they have pictures of little children, little cherubic children. Right? Isn't that true? Or a chas and kala, too. When my mother-in-law's house, Alei Shalom, they had pictures of a couple of rabbis, and a couple of pictures of all the children were young. There was no picture of middle-aged son-in-laws, Here's my overweight middle-aged son-in-law, He's getting a hair replacement, and he lost 30 pounds, and he took out a second mortgage. I mean, what are you going to say about him, The same thing when you go to the airport, you always see this, you go look at the big board, you come to pick somebody up, and they have arrivals and departures. Arrivals and departures. Huh? I had two boys that went there to Israel together on the same plane. I dropped them off at the airport and I came home, and a couple hours later I was eating dinner, and I said to my wife, they're probably over the Mediterranean right now. She goes, I don't want to think about my Kindle, in a metal tube flying, at 30,000 feet over over a sea. Let them call up and say, we're here, Mom, we're at the Dira, that's what we want to know. Arrivals and departures. Right? So I was thinking that maybe that's why people also get excited about a chassan and kala. People get very excited, a chassan and a kala. And people get very excited when a baby is born. But, in between, the day after the Sheva Bracha is over, you parked your car, what are you doing? You're taking up two spaces, nobody cares about you anymore. You go back to regular life. And the baby now, he's waking me up. Boom, boom, boom. Quiet, I'm up there, colicky baby. We didn't, When he was born, Mazel Tov, they'll bring you gift baskets to your door. And 8 days later, after the bris, he's a problem. He's everybody's problem. So why is everybody so excited to come to the brit? And then after that, and I was thinking like this. And the answer is that when you take a look at a beautiful little child, let's start on the other side of the equation. When you take a look at the face of a tzaddik, you're looking at actualized potential. Right? That's what a person could become. Ki odam eitz hasada. A person is a tree in the field. Right? You see a beautiful tree in an open field, and you see a beautiful face of a tzaddik. You see, that's what a human being could become. Right? And you take a look at a beautiful field, at a plowed field. I remember driving upstate someplace. I told my wife, I hope we're not learning Torah now, but my yafa near zeh, what a beautiful field. There's something beautiful about a field. You're looking at pure potential. You're looking, this child has those little rivulets in his mind, those little furrows in his mind. If you put seeds in them, seeds of Torah, out would come trees of ideas. Each tree is a revolution by himself. And you take that mind and you create neat and organized furrows. That's why Odom, the Maharal explained, is called Odom, earth, called dirt. Nice name. Thank you. Because he's offer min adama, he's made from the earth, and earth can become anything. If you make those neat rows and you put in the seeds and you take out the weeds, you can have an orchard that will give off fruit for generations and generations. Pri tzadik eitz chaim. If a person, on the other hand, if he lets the field go attended to, right? You pass by any blank field over here, where even in the city where a building fell down or no one's using that, in between two buildings, every year it becomes more snarly and more difficult and more, unruly, just like people. Right? The less they educate themselves, and the less they're working on themselves, and the less they're active doing, good routines of life, the less the furrows and the more confused they become, and the more unkempt and the more accomplished, and it's harder to have to rip more out in order to make it straight again. So the same thing, when you're looking at that child, it's pure potential. And that's what's represented by the near. And you take a look at the tree, and you see, look what came out of that field over there was a beautiful, when one seed was taken in, one idea was taken in. What is that tree? It's the result of one idea that was taken in, one seed. And what is the person also? That one seed that was taken in, and it was developed and developed. It was watered. It was poured sunshine upon it. It was given all the proper care until it became this fantastic fruit. The person takes one idea, one Torah idea, into his mind. And look, he can be transformed, and he can turn the whole world. He can turn his world. He can turn everything around. If a person finds his little portion of Torah, some idea that he's going to become attached to, some flag that he can repeat 1,000 times a day to himself until it becomes the theme of his life, until it transforms him and transforms the world. How about that? And maybe that's why it says, Ha'mahalach b'derech, the person's going on the way, v'shona, and he's learning, he's planting that idea. And Masik Mishnaso, he interrupts his learning. It's an interruption. And he looks up, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is showing him immediately, this is what a blank field is. He sees a blank field. That's your mind. He gives him a picture of that he should be able to put these two things together. And then he sees an elan, he sees a tree. He says, if you keep seeding your mind, and you take care of that seed that you're putting into your mind, it's going to become something someday. And still, he doesn't say, he says, oh, it's a beautiful tree. It's only the yofi of the tree. And it's only the yofi of the field. And he's mafsik mi mishnaso. He interrupts it. His learning is one thing. The picture that Hashem shows him is something else. There becomes two different worlds over here. It's the world that I see and the world that I learn. Like somebody leaves the base medrash and he leaves the base medrash behind. Instead of taking the base medrash with him, or instead of being reminded by what he sees outside, is now going to drive him back to the base medrash. Like when a person sees the beautiful diamonds, oh, I better call my chassan. It reminds me I have a beautiful chassan. I better be in touch. It didn't give him the connection to go backwards. So somebody lives with that type of disconnection. So it's ke'ilu mischayev bisnasho. The person put himself in mortal danger. But if a person gets the right message, he gets the connection, then alachas kama v'kama midatov muruba. It's ke'ilu machayev es nafsho. It brings life and it brings a vitality to the person's life. Okay, shkoyach.